Welcome to the Service to Syndication podcast, where we interview the biggest and most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world who have worn the uniform of this great country, those who provide services to our men and women in uniform, and other service-oriented professionals to provide you with the tool sets, the mindsets, and the skill sets to help you conquer your dreams and goals in real estate and to use this wealth creation vehicle so you can live a more successful, happy, and fulfilled life of generosity and prosperity. If what you desire is time, lifestyle, and financial freedom, you've come to the right place. We will bring to you the best real estate entrepreneurs who will give you the insights, the knowledge, experience, skills, so you can go out and crush it in whatever real estate asset class you desire. So grab a pencil and paper, sit back, and enjoy the ride on the Service to Syndication podcast. Hello, my servicemen and women and other service providers. Welcome to another episode of the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Cedric Marlowe. I am a U.S. Navy vet. Here on the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, we interview the most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world, where most have donned the uniforms of this great country. I aim to provide you with the tool sets, skill sets, and mindsets for you to achieve your personal and business goal while using real estate as a wealth creation vehicle to help you live a more successful, happy, and fun-filled life. I'm super excited today because I have with me Mr. Chris Lockwood, who is a top-notch real estate investor who invests in RV parks and mobile home parks. But before I properly introduce our guests, please, if you get some value out of today's interview, if you get some type of insight, mindset shift, if you learn a new skill, new information, receive inspiration or motivation to go out and take some action, to make some progress in your life, please share this episode with your friends. Send it to someone you know who might be or could be interested in real estate. Share it on your social media, post it on your wall, or share it in your stories. Help us spread our message while you help others. For all of you who shared this episode, I want to say thank you. Again, everybody, I have with me Mr. Chris Lockwood. He is a managing partner of Valhalla Investment Property Group and a retired disabled veteran who served for 24 years in the U.S. Army. Chris earned his master's degree in business administration with a concentration in strategic leadership while serving on active duty. He has more than 18 years of experience in sales and project management that brings unique skills to the mobile home park and RV park industry. Chris is the director of education for active duty passive income, hero and coach for ADPI Military Multifamily Mastermind. All right. Again, welcome, Christopher.
Hey, appreciate it, Cedric, man. Dude, what an introduction. I feel a little bit of pressure to provide some real value now.
Hey, man, I'm quite certain you'll do it. I know you'll knock this thing out the park. So, Chris, the first thing I do with my guests is that I ask them to walk us through the real estate journey in 75 seconds or less.
Yeah, so wow, 75 seconds left, man. I was a recruiter, so it's hard for me to narrow it down to that, but I'll give it a shot. So it all started in 2011 when we purchased our first single family house in Kansas City, Missouri, permanent, primary resident. And we decided we didn't decide to PCS. The Army decided to PCSs, and it was not something, that was feasible to sell at the time. The market just hadn't gone up, hadn't really appreciated. So we decided to rent, and so we became, like a lot of military members out there, an accidental landlord. And fast forward to when I hit 20 years in the Army, it was getting time to retire, and I needed to figure out what to do with my life. And so that's when I kind of did a bunch of research, and I'm sure you'll ask me how that came about later, but that's where I found it. So it really started with that first house and getting that cash flow, man, from those renters during that time. That was the catalyst to it.
Nice, nice. All right, so let's jump in the Wayback Machine real quick. And so what prompted you to join the military?
Yeah. So, I was a honor student in high school. Could have went to college, all that kind of stuff, but I was tired of school. I didn't want to do it. I didn't see the need, like all of my friends were doing it, and I was never one to do what everyone else was doing. And so I didn't really have another plan. And in 1 week's time, I actually talked to three different recruiters, and it was the Army recruiter that came to my house, sat down, talked with me and my family, and he's the only one that said, "What do you want to do with your future?" And when he said that, I was like, whatever the excuse was at the time, I was like, "Oh, I want to be this thing," and he's like, "We're good, we can make that happen." And I just kind of went with it. Like there was no real thought involved in doing it. I even asked my parents after the fact, after I've been in for a few years, I was like, I was trying to remember the day that I agreed to join the Army, and I don't ever remember that day. Um, so it was funny, just real quick. Yeah, I remember I left the house, left the recruiter there talking to my dad. My mom was cooking supper. I had to go pick up my little sister. And I came back about 15 minutes later. My dad was putting all these papers in front of me, this paperwork. He's like, "Here, sign this, fill this out, all this kind of stuff." And next thing I know, Sunday, the recruiter shows up at my house, says, "Hey, we're going to MEPS," right? And this was on a Friday. So 3 days later, I'm in Dallas, Texas at the MEPS taking my physical and joining the Army without ever actually remembering saying, "Yep, I want to do this." It was just kind of one of those natural, just, I'm just going to go with it and see what happens. I didn't have another plan. And, it seemed like as good as anything else to do. So, yeah, that was all the way back in the 1900s, the 1990s.
Yeah, exactly. Trust me, I know. I know. My story was a little different. It was, I already knew. I think I was 14, and when I joined the delayed entry program, and so I already knew once I graduated high school, bang, I was heading out of there. I'm from small town USA, so a lot of times that's about the only thing that's going to get you out of there. So, okay, and that is the craziest story I think I've heard so far of anyone joining the military. Like they really didn't say yes or no that they wanted to go. Dad just threw those papers down there, sign it, sign it. And then
Yep.
like literally 3 days later, you're at MEPS. Wow. Wow. So you retired out the military.
Mhm.
Okay, I understand you had that first house. So why jump into real estate at this point?
Yeah. So I remember when I was right around the 20-year mark, career was going good. I'd made E8. I was a first sergeant. Everything was great. But I knew time was winding down. I knew I only had a couple more opportunities for promotion. And so I started kind of just looking at what was next, right? And I remember someone telling me I wasn't quite ready to retire. And I remember someone telling me that the moment it's time to retire, you'll know. Right. And I hadn't had that moment yet. So, but I wanted to start doing my due diligence and trying to figure it out. But Cedric, I'm going to tell you, I was scared to death of having to get out and get a regular 9 to 5. I was particularly scared to death to become a GS employee. Now, look, I love the GS employee. I love all the civilians doing what they do, but I couldn't do it. I saw friends that retired as E7, E89. Hey, I know how they felt because we talked about it all the time. This sucks. This. Tired of this. They retire on a Friday, they come in on a Monday. It doesn't happen that quick, but it seemed like it in a suit and tie. And
Hmm.
it's like, I know being a GS7 is not going to fix all the things you didn't like last week, right? And so, I was tired of that. I was tired of filling out the leave request forms. I remember when I was a first sergeant, my company commander came to me and says, "Hey, first sergeant, we got to do your vehicle inspection for this 4-day weekend." I just laughed at him. I'm like, "Sir, that shit's not happening." I said, "I'm 40 years old. We are not going to go inspect my vehicle." Right. And so, I was tired of those things. So I'll start Googling how to make money without having a job. Like, I think that's literally what I put in there. Right. And I remember telling my wife, I'm like, I'm willing to do 1,000 side hustles to avoid that 9 to 5. I want freedom of time. I want freedom of, controlling on how much money I make. Promise you, everybody that listens to your podcast knows exactly what I'm talking about here.
Mhm.
You are beholden to the 2024 pay scale next year. Like, that's it. Like, there's no more, there's no less from the government. So, I was tired of that. I was tired of working 12, 14 hours a day. And the guy next to me was working, 3 or 4 hours a day if he was working that much, and we're getting paid the same. Like, I was tired of that. So, I did a bunch of research. I'm like side hustles, Googling side hustles, Googling start your own business. And real estate was always right there at the top. It was always like number one, two, or three on the list of things to do to create wealth. And that's what really kind of sparked that interest and got me going in that direction.
Okay. Okay. All right. So because I know a little bit about you, so you're a coach for ADPI,
Mhm.
um, real estate investor, as I mentioned, RV parks, mobile home parks. Um, let's see, you're in charge of the multifamily, mastermind there at ADPI. You know, you have kids, and let's not forget the most important job of all, husband.
Absolutely.
Where do you find the time?
On my calendar. No. So I'm actually really, really lucky in the sense that my wife is super supportive of my habits. I am a workaholic. I spend a lot of time in this office, but what's really great is both of my kids are homeschooled. So, when they have a problem with with school or something like that, like I have the flexibility throughout the day to stop and say, you know what, whatever this task I'm working on right now is nowhere near as important as helping my 14-year-old figure out, this basic algebra equation.
Mm.
So I could take those 10 or 15 minutes to do that. My wife will pop in and say, "Hey, we need to figure out X, Y, and Z." And I'm like, "Okay, give me 10 minutes. Let me finish this thing up and we can do that." So, having that support, I mean, hell, Cedric, I've been married, next March will be 25 years.
Okay, congrats.
So, in that time, we've had our ups and downs, but we're always supportive of each other.
Okay.
And that's what allows me to do this. But when it's time to shut it down, I shut it down. And
Mm.
what I really love, and this is why being an entrepreneur and all that is so important. I've seen the people who just work and work and work and work, and then you don't get to enjoy the future later. So we enjoy it throughout the week, throughout the day, even if it's for little spurts at a time. And when I can plan it, like I live in Florida now, and 2 weeks ago we took a random day off and went to the theme parks. So, it's to me, it's more about the quality of that time than it is the quantity, and that's what I do. I just, when it's time to shut it down, you shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that, like you say, your grind, your wife allow you the time to grind. And then when you shut it down, you shut it down. There's this one real estate uh professional developer. I mean, the guy is hella successful. And when I tell you hella successful, he is. But I heard this guy, and he says he works 20 hours a day, nonstop, and his wife accepts it. His kids accept it because, his main point behind it was, yeah, because they can afford the things that they want and can do whatever it is they want when they want to do it. But I'm just in the back of my mind, I'm like, dude, you're missing that quality time with your wife, your children, and next thing you know, kid's gonna be up and out the house, and you're gonna be looking around, and you're like, what happened? I don't care how many millions you got in the bank,
Yep.
you know. Sometimes family comes first. That's my saying. So,
Yeah, I mean, 24 years I sacrificed all of that. Now, my wife and I were pretty lucky. We had kids later in life. We were in our early 30s when we started having our kids. So, I'm fortunate that my daughter's 14, my oldest is 14, just turned 14 the day before Thanksgiving. My son is 11. So, it's they're still young enough, but now's the time when you have the opportunity to really mold them. And that's why, that's why one of the reasons we homeschool them. Half the time they're listening to these conversations that I'm having with people. And so I know, they might not realize it now, but they're learning. And
Mhm.
so when they hear me, they're picking this stuff up. And I just think that's so important that, not only are they learning the work ethic, but God willing, they're learning how to invest in real estate so they don't have to go out and get that 9 to 5 job either.
Absolutely, you're definitely planting that seed, man, and which is so awesome that you have that ability to do that, and real estate has afforded you that ability. So you got to love it. So let's talk about your, let's say your first deal out. Not we're not talking about the one that you had as a when you were in the military. You had the PCS, and you rented that house out. Let's talk about your first either syndication, joint venture deal that you had in mobile home park, RV park, whatever it was. Um,
Yeah.
how'd you get into that deal?
Yeah. So the actual very first deal, the first intentional investment property I purchased was a short-term rental cabin in Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area, Tennessee. And that was 3 years ago now. When I was doing all my research, trying to figure out, what to do and all that kind of stuff, I came across a podcast and it was talking about short-term rentals. And at the time, I understood how to buy a single family house because that's all I'd ever done, you know, and I understood, the concept of short-term rentals. I mean, essentially it's, you're running a one-room hotel, and I've stayed in hotels, so I understood how that worked. But all the stuff behind it, I'm like, I don't know, we'll figure it out as it goes. So I'm always the kind of guy that's like, if I got 30 to 40% of the information, I'm just
Mhm.
going to go for it, and whatever happens, happens. That's cost me, it's been a very expensive education at times, but it was an education nonetheless. And so I partnered up with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law. We each put in some money together and ended up buying this short-term rental cabin. And my wife and I manage it. We've been managing it for about 3 years now. Um, had some good times and some difficult times. We had a fire earlier this year that one of the guests tried to burn it down, and got all that kind of stuff done. Matter of fact, I'm hoping the insurance check is in my mailbox right now after finishing all the work. But it was just a leap of faith. I knew that real estate was what I was going to get into.
Mhm.
Short-term rentals sounded good, sounded a whole lot better than a fix and flip. The cash flow is way better, but the maintenance is more. There's more that comes with the higher cash flow. But at the end of the day, it was a risk, and it's one that I'm glad we took.
Okay, all right. So any mentors along the way, whether in the military or now?
Yeah. So for this deal, really, we relied a lot on our realtor. She was also doing short-term rentals, and just we did shit the hard way. We did it the YouTube way, looking up on YouTube. How do you do this? How do you do that? Facebook groups. Uh, and the problem with that method is you don't really know what questions to ask.
Mhm.
And that's what I tell people when we're coaching them and everything is, all the information is out there. All the information you ever need about anything in the world is out there. Unless
Mhm.
you're creating something brand new. If it's something that's already been done, it's out there. The problem is you don't know what question to ask.
Right.
And just asking how do you do this is not the right question, because you're going to get such a broad answer that you're going to be overwhelmed with information. So yeah, so I would say our realtor number one. Number two, we built a really, really good team on the ground there.
Okay.
Uh, and I'll be honest, it was through luck that we got the people working with us that we did. And she's really great. She's got a really great business model. She's our housekeeper slash maintenance slash de facto boots on the ground for it. But she'd been doing it for a long time. And so we relied heavily upon her advice. Still made our own decisions, but that's it's still important to utilize the people that are around you
Hmm.
that can help you with those things. And whether it's a property manager who knows the area, whether it's a realtor, whether it's a broker, whatever, don't discount what those people know. Even though you're the one that's investing, don't discount what they know.
Okay. So how did you guys just select on that market?
From that podcast, actually, um, they talked about the short-term rental market and what to look for. And really, there's two different kinds of short-term rental markets. I guess there's more than two, but there's the primary ones are your vacation destinations, the mountains, the beaches, the lakes, things like that. And then you have the people that travel for more professional reasons, stuff like that, whether they're traveling nurses or doctors or businessmen or businesswomen or whatever. Um, so uh, the market, we were like, hey, we like the mountains. Well, let's just buy a cabin there. That's like the number one place in the country to do it. So let's do it. And we got into that market right before the big boom. So when COVID hit, um, everybody was locked down, everybody was scared to go anywhere. But then when things kind of started loosening up, that part of the country, like everybody was flocking there. And so when people started flocking there, prices started going up. And we got in, and Cedric, when I say we got in at the tail end of when prices were low, like I'm saying we closed and the next week we could have sold it for 50% more than what we paid for it.
Wow.
Like that's how like just get it in there just perfectly, right? So we got a really great cabin, really, but we selected it because it was a vacation destination. It was the number one performer in the country year on year. Because when you think about some place like Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, short-term rentals have been a thing for 30, 40 years
Yeah.
before Airbnb was even hell, before the internet existed.
Right.
So it's a proven market, and that's why we wanted to play it a little safe, and that's why we went with that one.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was kind of yeah, when you mentioned that. Okay, by the way, just for context, where were you guys living?
Where were we then? We would have been in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia at the time.
Nice, nice. Yeah, you know, you educated yourself enough to know that it could be done remotely, you
Yep.
know. So, yeah, for those that are listening, you just listen, he educated himself to know that he could remotely own remotely. Okay. He had boots on the ground, which you definitely have to have that if you're doing this business away or remote. So now, what markets right now are you currently investing in?
So right now, my team, the Valhalla Investment Property Management Group, we are focused on kind of from Atlanta, not in Atlanta, but like from Atlanta down in Georgia down to around the Ocala market in Florida. I live in Ocala, Florida, and then one of my partners lives up around Atlanta, outside of Atlanta. So we got two circles that kind of envelop that. Our three properties we have in Georgia, our three mobile home and RV parks are in Georgia. So we're focused on that area. But we also recently stumbled into some opportunities in South Dakota. And doing some market research and everything, we discovered that is kind of a little hidden gem that that it's growing. And it's we're under contract on a couple of properties up there right now, working on getting under contract on a couple of properties up there right now. They're going to be pretty exciting. We're expanding out a little bit, but still looking in the southeast region for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember my uncle. He's one of these guys that travel with jobs, and he's in that I guess you call it construction management field. And I know he went up there in South Dakota, and he was up there for well over a year. And the whole time he lived in like an RV park because he has an RV that, he goes from here to there and everywhere. So yeah, that's definitely a huge market,
Yeah.
in that area. So now I'm not as familiar with RV parks and mobile home parks, I mean, I know what they are, don't get me wrong, but um, like single family and multifamily, there are classes of assets, A, B,
Right.
C, D class. Are those same things prevalent in both mobile home parks and RV parks?
Yeah. It's a little different for RV parks, so I'll start with that one.
Okay.
So what you have in the RV park world is you have destination parks. Those are like parks that families go to and they stay for, vacation and stuff like that. You have your long-term parks. You have that a lot in like Florida and South Georgia. That's what ours is in South Georgia, is a long-term park. We have a few overnighters. Um, but that's where people go, and like your snowbirds from up north, they'll come down to Florida and stay during the winter months. So they're more month to month type parks, and they'll have some amenities and stuff like that, but it's geared more towards the long term tenants. And then you have just your transient parks that people stop at for a night or two on their way to their next destination. So that's really the RV park side of it. On the mobile home park side, you do have different classes. But what we really focus on more so than the class or the park is the ownership mix. And what I mean by that is whether you have a bunch of tenant owned homes, you have a bunch of park owned homes. And that, any part can be cleaned up. You can, I mean, hell, if it's really bad, you can just take everything out and start over if you wanted to. But they do have different classes, and I mean they're in different states of repair. And you got to understand that these mobile home parks, some of them are 30, 40, 50 years old. And so, the trailers have been sitting there for a long time. And so bad management lets them run down and all those kind of things. But what we really focus on again though is kind of the mix of owner occupied homes compared to park owned homes that we rent out to people.
Okay. And why is that?
Maintenance. If I don't own the house, I don't have to worry about the maintenance.
Mm,
So in an RV and mobile home park, the whole goal is to rent the dirt. So I'm going to rent you a spot to park your house, whatever it is,
yeah.
whether it's a mobile home and RV park, or a mobile home or RV. And if I rent the dirt, I am responsible for all the infrastructure from your house to the utilities, out to the main utility. So all my water piping, all my electrical, all my sewer, all that, like that's my responsibility
Yeah.
because I own the land. If you own the house, you're responsible for the toilets and the sinks and the air conditioner and all that kind of stuff. If I own the house, I'm still responsible for all that. Now I collect a higher rent and everything for that, but I would happily give up that couple of $100 a month and not have to worry about, you know, them clogging up my toilet. They can clog up their own toilet and make it their problem.
Makes sense. Uh, so these mobile home parks and RV parks, how are you guys finding your deals?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways. Building relationships is so important. It is, the number one thing that any investor needs to do. They need to start doing before you even think you're an investor. You need to be building those relationships. Um, a lot of networking, LinkedIn, those kind of things, going to conferences, all those kind of typical things. But, getting out there, meeting the owners, actually talking with brokers and things like that, like it's so important. And I'll give your listeners some actionable steps that they can do. Like this is some no shit. You can do these things right now, no matter what you know. Figure out how to do even the most basic underwriting on a property. And then go on the websites like Craigsy, Marcus and Millchap, LoopNet, Mobile Home Park Store, whatever it is. Figure out kind of what your asset class is, whether you want it to be apartment, self storage, doesn't matter. Underwrite those deals that those brokers have listed. Now, everybody does that. Nobody underwrites those deals and then reaches out to that broker and says, "Hey, Mr. Broker, Miss Broker, I just underwrote this deal. I got a few questions. Clear this up. Okay, here's why this doesn't work for me." They're asking $3 million for it. My evaluation based on the information that I have on it says it's only worth 2.2 million. What can we do to get these numbers closer together? Because I can't justify paying this. Do you have other information? What is it? And you start that dialogue and you have that back and forth. And then if you do that enough times, that broker's going to say, okay, look, you've underwritten all 10 deals I have listed and none of them work for you. What will freaking work for you? You know what? I'm glad you asked. This is what'll work for me. And but if you don't provide that feedback, if you don't reach out, if you don't tell them, you're never going to know. And you can actually find deals doing that. The last park we bought in Georgia, that's how it came about. We saw it, we underwrote it, we're like, hey, this doesn't work. And they're like, well, this is what they want. And I'm like, hey, totally get it. Every so often I would follow up with them. One of my partners would follow up with them. And Joe Jackson, one of my partners, he ended up he's a retired Marine, by the way. He ended up running into the broker at a convention and they got to talking about it. He's like, yeah, it just fell out of contract because they couldn't get bank financing. And we're like,
Mm.
awesome. Do you remember when we mentioned seller financing, 6 months ago? They're like, yeah, they're interested now. So that's the best way about going about finding deals. Follow through with what you say, and the next thing people are going to be calling you and saying, "Hey, here's the deal. I've got this. I'm working that." And now you get to start being more and more selective as to what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. What won't work? What I hear people say all the time is, "Yo, I was sitting there and this deal came across my desk." Cedric, man, I clean up my desk every day, and deals don't flop on there, right? You gotta put in the work. You got to build those relationships. You got to understand it takes time, but when you do that, it'll come back to you. So my challenge for your listeners is for the next 14 days from when you listen to this, underwrite one property a day. Then reach out to that broker and tell them why it won't work and find out what you can do to make it work. If you do that over a course of 14 days, you're going to find something. Guarantee you will find something that you can start putting in offers on.
Nice, nice. You guys have been challenged. 14 days. Underwrite a deal. 14 straight days. And reach out to those brokers that you find. Make it happen. So that's pretty much, and you greatly answered my following question, which would have been, how are you nurturing those relationships and helping you find deals? You're doing that by following up, doing what you said you're going to do, underwriting them, giving them a call and say, hey, it's not working because of one, two, and three. Great. So is it easy to say that you guys are primarily on their priority list, some of your brokers?
I would never assume that.
Ah,
Uh, you know,
okay.
um, when you close a couple of deals with a broker, I think you move up.
Okay.
But a broker's not going to say, "Hey, you're my number one guy." They're gonna say you're on my list of number one guys. But I would never assume that hey, we've got it made. You got to continue to build that relationship, continue to reach out. I mean, when you're in town, take them out for coffee or lunch or something like that. I mean, it sounds like cheesy, or that only happens in the movies, but brokers don't get a lot of love. um so when you do those little things, it does make a huge difference, but never assume that you're the number one guy and they're just going to bring you everything.
Yeah, I'm so glad you reiterated that because I'm going on a trip here pretty soon to one of my markets, and I recently had a conversation with the broker. He's not necessarily in the exact area that I like to buy, but he's within the state. So he may be able to get me a deal in the area that I actually like if I meet with him and, take him out to lunch. So, and I'm going pretty close to where he lives, or where he works anyway. So, yeah, I'm gonna give this guy a call and say, hey, let's meet for breakfast, lunch, or whatever when I'm in that area. Good stuff, man.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
absolutely.
reminder. And now let's transition a little bit to your most recent acquisition. How was it acquired? Syndication, JV, money out your back pocket? Hey, how was it?
Yeah, the last one we did, it was a syndication. That was for the mobile home park in mobile home slash RV park there in Georgia. Um, We syndicated that one, but it was also seller financing. So it was some creative maneuvering there. We put 30% down and then financed the seller financed the rest of it. So, he's getting cash flow every month. He gets a check for almost 10 grand sent to him. And we plopped $1 million in his bank account when we closed. So he's pretty happy. But yeah, we that was the one I was talking about. We kept following up with the broker and it finally came through. So that was a syndication. We partnered with another team to help us raise the capital. My team had never raised, like, everything we'd done before then had been a joint venture.
Okay.
So we partnered with another team. We brought in someone with some experience, gave up some of the equity to help us raise the money and kind of figure out the process. Even though we knew what to do, like, we never
Mhm.
had our hands into the system with the syndication software and all that kind of stuff. So, they kind of guided us through that process, which helped build our confidence and being able to do it again. And now we're looking to raise a couple $1 million over the next couple months for a couple of deals we're working on. So, but yeah, that last one was that syndication.
Okay.
Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Service to Syndication podcast. If you are a military service man or woman, government employee, or any other service related professional, this is for you. I once was where you are. As a service member, I lived paycheck to paycheck. As a government employee, I knew there was more out there for me. I tried all the get rich quick schemes. None of them worked. Then a friend of mine introduced me to real estate investing. I am a commercial multifamily syndicator who helps those who have served in the military and those who provide services to our men and women in uniform and other service-oriented professionals achieve their time, lifestyle, and financial freedom by investing passively into multifamily real estate. If you know that this life has more in store for you, I invite you to tune into the Service to Syndication podcast to learn the tools, tricks, and concepts to help you achieve the time, lifestyle, and financial freedom that comes with investing in real estate. So go over to cobbscreekcapital.us. That is COBBSCREEKCAPITAL.US and schedule a call so that we can get to know one another and see how we can work together to help you achieve your goals.
So how's that one being managed?
Yeah, so we actually formed our own property management group, property management company. So I run the property management company, and we have some property. We have our property managers on the ground that run it full time. So we put a bunch of systems in place. That's what was missing. And a lot of these mom and pops, why they're so good, is they can be beautiful parks. They can be ran, good. They can be making money, but they're not sophisticated, so they don't have any kind of online presence. They don't have they're not using software to optimize their income potential with nightly rates in RV parks. They don't have the ability for tenants to pay online, so it's still cash in hand and checks and those kind of things. So we put all those in place, and as we continue to build out those processes, we'll be able to take those same things from this park and plug it into the next one, whether it's a mobile home or RV park, and then plug it into the next one that we buy. Because in this world, in the mobile home and RV park world, there's not a lot of professional management.
Okay.
So most owners have to do their own sort of self-management, not necessarily boots on the ground management, but they have to build these things out. So we aim to build out the processes that we can then offer to other owners so that they don't have to worry about building it. And then, we'll work with the owners to put management in place. So that's kind of the future goal down the road once we get everything kind of perfected on our end. But yeah, I wouldn't say self-managed, but it's professionally managed by a company that we own and control.
Okay. Okay. That's great. You guys, brought it in-house. Now you're vertically integrating your processes. That's great. So how long ago did you guys purchase this?
We closed on that 27 February of this year. So we're coming up on a year right now.
Okay. With you being the PM on that, uh how often have you been down there since you guys closed on it?
I was there the week before the weekend before Thanksgiving, dropping off $1,000 worth of gift cards to hand out to the tenants. So I only live 2 hours away.
Oh,
So it's really easy. I'll pop up there, once every other month or so. If my our property managers actually went out of town for a month earlier this summer. So me and one of my partners was like, hey, instead of trying to train up somebody else to do it, we'll just go in there and run this thing, right? And man, let me tell you, that was a learning experience. But it's good to be close enough to be able to do that, but we're
yeah.
also far enough away that it forces you to put those systems in place for when things happen, so I don't have to go take care of it. My PM, he's got my on-site manager, he's got certain threshold of money that he can spend. So, like if there's an electrical issue, power goes out, something like that, he has a threshold of what he can do. And so he does those things. He follows those SOPs, does those things. If it's larger than that, then we get a phone call, we make a decision, we move on. And it's like emergency situations. Look, if it's August in South Georgia and someone's AC goes out, like there's no debate on what to do, right?
Absolutely.
It's get it fixed and then call me later and we'll figure out what to do. Like you don't ask my permission to get this, 75-year-old lady some AC, get some damn AC in her house and we'll figure it out later. But yeah, just putting those systems in place, man, make it easy so you don't have to go up there.
Okay. So you guys brought in another company to help you guys get this to close. Is Valhalla pretty much the primary on
Yeah.
day-to-day operations on it?
Yeah, we're the primary.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So with this particular park, what type of value adds did you guys do to it?
So the first thing we did, I wouldn't necessarily say was a value add, but it was a needed CapEx expense. We had a road that the RVs would drive over and it would flood. Now it wouldn't wash out, but just how it was built, like it was what they call a spillway road, so the water was designed to go over it,
Yeah.
but it would leave like 6 inches of rain or of water there for like forever, like it just never dried up. So the first thing we did is we spent like $65,000 to beef that up, put in culverts and pave that part of the road,
Okay.
and we did that before we did any rent raises or anything else like that. So once we did that, then came the real value add for us and the investors. We raised rent. We put in, kind of updated some of the rules so that they could be better enforced. Brought in the property management software, brought in the online booking system so that people could just book, right there, not even have to talk to us. Um, and then just better operations. Like, well, and I'll tell you, mom and pop owners, if they get a $20 bill, that $20 bill don't go in the bank. That $20 bill goes in their pocket. So, just properly accounting for the income,
Yeah.
that right there added probably, $250,000 to the value. Didn't have to change anything other than keep up with the money that was coming in. So that was another really, really big thing. But then, we raised rents, we brought them up to market. Um, we put in high speed Starlink internet that people are paying for.
Okay.
We're getting ready to institute rubs on the electrical. We have to pay part of the electric bill because part of the park systems run off of it, but then, individually metered all the lots. So they'll be starting to pay their portion of their power usage, moving forward. So yeah, just, I mean, really small things, just, increase that value.
Oh, okay. All right. So don't sound like you guys had like a real big uh not necessarily CapEx budget, but a real big turn in terms of getting this park
Yeah.
back on online for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, there was no like major renovations. I mean, we did some maintenance work on the park-owned homes. We have 6 park-owned homes that were, had some delayed maintenance we took care of.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, other than getting rid of a few undesirable tenants, there, it's, We have people that average stay is like 3 months in the RV park side. So, and we
Wow.
have a waiting list a mile long of people wanting to come in. So that's, that's easy stuff. And I would venture to say, even if we did something just ridiculous and raised the rent to like, $700 a month, it's 500 right now. Like, yeah, we'd probably have about half the park leave and then we would fill it up in 2 weeks. So,
Nice.
but
Yeah. So,
that's why we practice compassionate capitalism, because I'm not going to
yeah.
sacrifice my tenants for a better
Yes.
return, but I'm also not going to sacrifice returns just to satisfy the tenants.
Wow. Compassion capitalism. I've never heard that term a day in my life.
Yeah, that's one we made up. I like it.
Oh yeah, I like it as well. So if you listen to a podcast and I'm the guest on it and you hear that, you be like, I gave him that.
I like it.
Yeah. So pretty much with your CapEx budget, have you guys stayed on budget?
We've had a few things that have popped up, but we had some extra, and everything that we put towards capex. We have a call bi-weekly every other week with the asset management team. We discuss the needs. But yeah, I mean, there's only been a few things that have kind of popped up that we weren't expecting, but the major stuff that we set aside, we took care of those things first.
Okay. So your property manager that you mentioned that went away for like a month, are they boots on ground or do they live there at the park?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they got a nice big Class A rig that they park right behind the office and in one of the lots there, and they live there full time.
Okay. Now is this PM, do they also do light maintenance or you guys got somebody for that?
No, we have one of our mobile home park tenants that does the mowing on the mobile home park side.
Okay.
And he does all the groundskeeping and all that kind of stuff over on the mobile home park side. And then our in-house manager, he does the mowing on the RV park side. But for other like plumbing and stuff like that, we hire that out to locals and have them come in and take care of that stuff.
Okay. Uh Along that line, how did you guys find those specific contractors that do those type of things?
So finding the contractors, it's in a fairly small town.
Right.
So, there's only two or three people you usually got to call and get quotes and bids from.
Right.
For the bigger jobs, we actually went with, and I can't remember the name of the company now, but they do really, really good work. Brain, something like that. They're out of Florida.
Okay.
They do work all across the country, and they came in, they did the road for us, they expanded our laundry facility. We have another local handyman that's done some of the maintenance on the mobile homes for us. He does a really good job. He's just a retired guy that just likes to get out there and do that stuff. It's an interesting story about how we got 75 trees removed from the park. We had gotten quotes anywhere from about 70,000 to about 150,000 to get some trees removed.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember a few months back, there was a hurricane that came through. Well, that hurricane went right over our park. Like, I mean, like it was directly in the path.
Right.
And so we had some guys that were down from somewhere else in the country come to do some work to cut down trees, and they're like, "Hey, you know, we were lucky we didn't have any major trees come down, but when we had some we wanted to take down, it was like 45 of them we wanted to take down, but that was going to
Mhm.
cost us anywhere from 70 to, like I said, $150,000.
Right.
And they're like, hey, we're going to be here for a couple months staying in your park. We can take these trees out for you, um, for around 30 grand. And we're like, how many can you do? They're like, well, we walked around and counted about 75 that we would take out. And we're like, okay, we're thinking to ourselves, first of all, that's twice as many trees as what we were quoted on before for
Right.
half the price. We're like, how quickly can you get it done? They're like, well, if we start today, we'll be done in like 3 days.
Wow.
And we were like, holy cow. And I mean, these guys, Cedric, when I'm telling you, I wish I would have been there to see it, but it was described to me. They were climbing up these trees, chopping off the top. And I mean, they were just laying them down and stacking them up like quick. And it was probably, that was one of those things we hadn't budgeted for,
Yeah.
but it was something we discovered needed to be done. And we got lucky that those guys were there at the right time to get it done for us at a great price.
Beautiful, man. You're right. You know, everything just aligned. The heavens opened up, literally, literally, and it just worked for you.
What's that I was saying about luck? Luck is when opportunity and preparation collide or something like that.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So now let's talk about your team. First, let's talk about Valhalla. How did you guys come together?
Yeah, we all met in the mastermind in the ADPI's mastermind. Tim Crams and I, he's retired Army. We started talking a couple years ago. We joined about the same time, back at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Joined the group, and we talked off and on for a while, and we became accountability partners through that process. Talking quite often about all kinds of different things. And I remember one day he said to me, he said, "Chris," he said, "you got to get off your ass and quit just talking about doing this and start taking action."
Nice.
And I'm like, "What do you mean? I do take action. I go to all the calls and I do this and I do that." He goes, "That's not action towards buying property." He's like, "You need to be, looking at properties, talking to people about being on a team and all that kind of stuff." It was about 3 months after that conversation, I was under contract on my first property with some guys that fell through. Then next to really kind of bridge the gap for all of us was, so at that time I was working with, on that first property we got under contract, Chris Jones and Brandon Feldman were part of that team. And those were two guys that were in the mastermind. Well, when that deal fell through, we kind of all started doing our own things. Well, Joe Jackson, the retired Marine, he joined our program and was going through our cohort. And he called me up. He's like, "Hey, I'm under contract on this property, but I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "Dude, you just started the education. You're already under contract and you don't know what to do." I said, "Tell me about it." And he told me about it. And I was like, "Hey, dude, this sounds exciting, man. I'm in. What do we do? Like, what do you want to do?" And he goes, "Well, I've been talking to this other guy. Do you know Tim Crams?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I know Tim Crams. I mean, me and Tim, we go, way back." He goes, "Well, he wants to be a part of it too. Do you have a problem with it?" I'm like, "Let's jump on a call." So we all jumped on a call. And, during that call, I was like, "Hey, I got this other guy that I work with, Chris Jones. I want to bring, see if he's interested. He does a little bit of underwriting and that kind of stuff. He might be interested." So we ended up, talking with him. Brandon didn't come on until later. We had another partner in the beginning, Josh Dynison, who was working with Tim Crams on another property. And he was also in our mastermind. But Josh, he also owned a screen print business that was just, he had an opportunity to really go out and like expand his business. And I mean, he's killing it right now. So, we were left a person short, and Jones was doing the underwriting and he hated it. Like he could do it, but he didn't like it.
Right.
And I was like, "Hey, because me and Chris Jones had walked with Brandon Feldman on that another deal." I'm like, "What about that dude? Like, he's really sharp. He's really good with underwriting, but he sees kind of the big picture. So it's not just the numbers." So we ended up having some conversations with him, and just through, multiple conversations and all that, that's how we really came together as a team.
Okay.
And now, we're lining up we've lined up like whose roles and responsibilities fall where. And we're just driving forward with that process now, and it's been great. It's been fun.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that ADPI, great, you know, I think when I first came across ADPI, it literally had to be in its infancy, like years ago when I first came across them. And I was active for a little bit in a group, and then I just fell off and everything like that. But uh, you know, again, just signed up again myself, so I definitely plan on being very active in the group. But so let's talk about that Georgia deal just a little bit more here. What was the purchase price? What was the raise? And you already pretty much said the financing was seller financing? And on top of that, how long is the seller financing for?
Yeah. So the original asking price, excuse me, the original asking price was like 3.2 million when we first started looking at it. And when the contract fell through, we were like, hey, we can do 2.825. And we'll, the seller wanted 30% down. So we ended up raising with the CapEx budget and the reserve and all that kind of stuff that we wanted. We ended up raising 1.4 million. And we put down 30%, which came out to just shy of $1 million, like $986,412, whatever it was. So we put that down. Then we had the 400,000 for CapEx in reserves and all those kind of things. So we ended up raising or collecting more than what we needed by like $44,000. Just through people what they actually transferred in and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so we paid 2.825. The note is it's amortized over 30 years at a 5.5% interest rate
Wow.
with a 10-year balloon.
Okay. 10 years.
So we have until 2032, 2033 for the balloon payment. And since we've owned it, conservatively speaking, it's worth anywhere from 4 to 4.5 million right now.
Yeah. So right now you guys could easily, well, not with these interest rates, but you could, technically speaking, you could refinance and cash out your seller and be all in. Nice. Beautiful.
Yep, if we wanted to, we could do that. He's got a piece of property right next to it that I'm aiming to buy here in the future. So I want to keep him on the hook, making payments to him for a little while until I can figure out how to talk him into selling me that so we can expand.
Yeah, nice. So your investors, are they primarily retail, or do you think retail investors, or do you think a lot of them have invested in real estate before?
So I know the ones that J-Core, that's the other team, the Joint Chiefs of Real Estate. They're another ADPI born company there. A couple of their members are in the group, and matter of fact, 3 of them are heroes in the multifamily world with us. They brought some experienced investors with them. That's why we partner with them.
Okay.
And and there were, we have a few people that we brought in that were, it was their first time investing. Matter of fact, I know there's at least 2, if not 3 people that, from within the ADPI multifamily mastermind who invested in our deal, and that was their first investment. So there was a couple of, I'd say it's a pretty healthy mix of first time investors and experienced investors in that.
Okay. So, what has Valhalla been doing to nurture their current investor base? What do you guys do to do that?
Yeah. So Chris Jones is primarily in charge of that. But what it really comes down to is just being part of the conversation constantly, posting about what you're doing on social media, having those conversations, answering those questions, giving back to the community, telling people what you're doing. And when they show a little bit of interest, you just, you ask them, what have you thought about? What are your questions? Have you ever thought about it? Do you have a 401k that's just sitting there not doing anything? Well, let's talk about how you can turn that money into an investment. So I want to say Jones does a newsletter that goes out, particularly to the people that invested in this deal. We have a regular newsletter that goes out to them. We have a thing on our website that you can sign up to get more information. Jones sends out the a newsletter every now and then, but it just really comes down to just talking to people and being open and honest. You see a lot of times in the professional world that people want to keep information to themselves, or or be stingy with it, and just tell people what you're doing and it'll come to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, so let's come back around for the military community, do you still keep in touch with many of your comrades that you were in the service with?
I've got a few that I talk to on a pretty regular basis. I am really bad at kind of keeping that conversation going with people who, just through Facebook and stuff like that. But I have a few select ones that I still communicate on a regular basis with. But towards the end of my career, I moved so much. Like I was moving every 18 months to 2 years for the last 10 years.
Okay.
It got harder and harder to build those. But what I really love is it doesn't matter if I haven't talked to you in 10 days or 10 years, right? When you do get a chance to connect, it's like you're right back in those old times. And I think that's what draws me so much to the ADPI community
Mhm.
is even though I'm not in the military anymore, I still get to support the military. Our goal, our mission, the ADPI mission is to positively impact 3 million families over the next 10 years in their financial situations through learning how to invest in real estate. And so understanding where the community is, where it came from, what it's like to be a part of it really helps us convey that message that we can change your life. So in that context, yes, I stay in contact with people because I want to help them. But I'd really do a piss poor job of the personal relationships I have with a lot of people I serve with.
Understood. I'm like that with just people in general. I meet new people, and because I'm so busy with trying to, do the whole thing, look for deals, close on deals, just and life. You just forget to kind of keep giving back and nurturing those relationships of prior. But anyway, um, how do you give back to the military community outside of ADPI?
Yeah, I mean that's that's the big way for me. I do like to focus my attention on that because it is an opportunity to educate them on things I didn't know coming up. I wish when I was at E4, somebody would have taken me by the hand and say, "Hey, look, dummy, uh, here's what you need to be doing." And something I've learned through this whole process is it's not just about teaching the military community how to invest in real estate. It's about teaching them what true value is. And I've noticed that it's hard for us to understand the value of like coaching, the value of joining these kind of masterminds, whether it's ours or somebody else's, because every time you screw up, there's someone there to mentor you, right? They're more than happy to show you a little bit of love. But understanding that if you spend 5, 10, 15, $20,000 on a program like that's hard to understand the value in that because there's nothing tangible, there's nothing you can hold on to. So really I spend a lot of time trying to educate people on why that's a good investment and how that can like life-changing opportunities. I spent a lot of money on coaching, but none of it was wasted. None of it I feel was something that I didn't take something out of that's going to turn into a lot more zeros in the future. So yeah. So there's that. And then the other thing that we're ramping up and we're working on is we also want to end veteran homelessness in the next decade. So that's where helping those 3 million families will help achieve that other goal of ending that veteran homelessness. So
Yeah, nice. So, Chris, before you became this very successful person I see in front of me, give our listeners a little bit of your backstory, like where you grew up. You've kind of said some of that, but and how was your upbringing, and what in your past shifted your mindset into becoming the person you are today?
yeah, so I was pretty lucky. I grew up with both parents in the house. My dad was probably one of the hardest working people I know. he had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit too. You know, he always had a job, he always worked, and throughout the course of growing up, you know, he owned a few businesses, tried to branch out on his own and do it. But what I really take from all of that is just, you know, being the provider, doing what you have to do to put food on the table, clothes on the back, and a roof over the house, right? And you know, my mom stayed at home. She was always there, you know, to do whatever was needed to be done for me and my sister. And it's funny. I always laugh because it's like it seems parents get really successful once the kids move out of the house, and that's I don't know if that's because they get successful or the kids quit sucking up all the money, but you know, my dad finally was able to get his company, his business up and running and moving in the right direction, you know, after I was already had been in the army for a while. Um, but what I think really, you know, through that, what I learned was, you know, there's other ways to do it besides the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
If you have the passion and you put in the work, and it's not going to happen on its own. So, you know, there were times that were tough, you know, growing up. You know, the reason I love mobile home parks and all that is I grew up around them. You know, I grew up living in a trailer house. Um, so, you know, I understand the people. I understand what it's like to struggle. I understand what it's like to. I didn't know it at the time, but you know, when my dad had his first mechanic shop, you know, we would leave the shop and go buy what we were going to have for supper the night and then go home and cook it. And I just thought it was out of convenience. I didn't know that it was because luckily a job came in and he got paid, that now there was money to go buy food. So, you know, being able to live a decent life and grow up and not know what the real struggles were until later on, like I think that is key. Um, you know, I try and teach my kids the same way, but it's really hard to fake struggle, and quite honestly, we don't struggle anymore. So I'll just tell my kids that we're broke, we can't afford that. And but yeah, you know, I'm grateful for growing up the way I did and how I did and what it's done for me now.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, I grew up kind of similar, so I get exactly where you're coming from. So I only have a few more questions for you as we end this. You know, time flies, as they always say.
Yeah, it does.
All right, Chris. So, what is one belief you had as a beginning investor that has turned out to be false, but may be holding people back from taking the leap into investing?
Somebody like me can't do this. You know, I'm just a poor kid from Texas who, you know, joined the army, and you know, I was enlisted, and you know what gives me the right to think that I can go out there and buy multi-million-dollar properties? You know, I think that was the biggest hurdle for me to overcome. I remember when I submitted my first offer on a property, Cedric. It was a $3 million, 13 cabin short term rental property in North Carolina. And I remember looking. I picked up my phone and I went to the bank account, and there was like $1,000. It was like a week before payday. There was like $1,000 in my checking account, and I was like, "Who the hell am I to be submitting an offer on a this is stupid. This is nuts. Why are all these people telling me that yeah, just send it in, you know, like, just do it. We'll figure it out." And I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And I did it. And I remember about 4 hours later, I got a text message from the broker, and he's like, "Hey, just want to let you know, just heard back from the owners. They accepted your offer." Right. But before I even got to that, I remember looking at the phone and seeing the text from him, and I'm like, this is either going to be exactly what I thought it was going to be, or it's going to be life changing. And either way, I'm not ready to read this. And I read it, and they accepted the offer. And I went into the message group and I messaged the guys, and I'm like, "Hey, I got good news and I got bad news." I said, "The good news is they've accepted our offer." I said, "The bad news is they've accepted our offer." You know, so I think overcoming that mindset of I don't deserve to be the one doing this. You know, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not experienced. I'm just an enlisted guy in the army, right? So that was like the big thing. And fast forward to what I know now, you know, I'm not intimidated by all those numbers. I'm not intimidated by, the negotiation portion of talking with a broker and owner, and they're like, well, they want this for it. I'm like, well, that's stupid. We're not paying that much for it. And that's kind of one of my superpowers on my team, besides the asset and property management, is I am able to really see the deal from an outside viewpoint, and pick apart all the little problems with it, all the little things that in the excitement of buying a property that you really got to pay attention to, and figure out how we work around those obstacles. But before, when I had that mindset of who am I to do this, like I'm not Donald Trump or Warren Buffett or Elon Musk or any of those dudes that just they had to work to get to where they're at, but we don't see that. We don't see all the failures that it took to get to that success. We don't see them until they're successful. So once I overcame that, and don't get me wrong, it still creeps in sometimes, but you just fight it back. You have a conversation with someone and it's like, all right, let's move forward and do it. And so I think that was the biggest thing I had to overcome.
Okay, great. What strategies would you recommend to a beginner that has led to some of your success?
Look, join a group. Stop worrying about how much it costs to get into a group. This community, we'll talk about it. Let's figure it out. But join a mentorship program that will educate you. It's like I said earlier, all the information is on YouTube. It's all out there, but it's not laid out in a way that makes sense. So if you spend, some of the more expensive ones out there are like $20,000 a year. If you spend $20,000, $40,000 on a program, understand that is an investment, but it only pays off if you do something about it. If you take action, but get educated. You got to pay for people's time. Time is super valuable. So you have to put in the work, because you're getting the shortcut. You can go out there and do this and struggle for the next 10, 15 years. And I promise you it's going to cost you more than that 40 grand. Not necessarily in how much money you spend, but how much money did you not make while you were trying to figure this shit out. So that would be the one thing I would tell them. Join a damn group. Quit worrying about how much it freaking costs. Figure it out, and use that as your stepping stone to success.
Beautiful. Well, Chris, it has been a blast having you as our guest today. As we close out, please tell our listeners where we can learn more about you, get in touch with you, and learn about all the fabulous things you have going on right now.
Yeah, the best way to contact me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Christopher Lockwood. You can hit me up on my email at chris@Valhalla, VALHALLAMG.com. So that's probably the two best ways to really reach me. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on there too. If you join the ADPI group, Active Duty Passive Income, I'm super active in there. But yeah, hit me up if anybody has any questions.
All right, there you have it. Awesome, Chris. Again, I want to say thank you for your time today, and all the wisdom you have provided my listeners is greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you, our fans, for tuning in to the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, where we want to provide value to you and your investing business. Please tune in to our next episode, where we will have another fantastic investing professional. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Service to Syndication podcast. We want you to know that we love and appreciate your support, and we are grateful about being a part of your journey to becoming a successful real estate entrepreneur. Please share this episode with a friend who you think will get a lot out of what you just heard. Send it to someone who you know is interested in real estate and dreams of having it all and being the best they can be in all areas of life. And if this was really valuable, share it on your social media stories and timelines. Thank you for watching and listening. Now go be great.